And thank you all for joining us on what I know has been a trying day for many of you to make it here to the Intercontinental O2. Again, my name is David Penn. I'm a research analyst with Finovate. And joining me is Bianca Zwart, who is Chief of Staff to the CEO of bunq. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Great. So I thought we'd get started where I like to start with a lot of companies when I'm talking with them for the first time. And that is, what problem does bunq solve, and who does it solve it for?
Of course, happy to tell you all. But before I do so, I think it's important that we take a little step back and look at why bunq was founded in the first place. So we were founded just after the financial crisis of 2008, a very relevant happening, especially this week. So basically, our founder and CEO, Ali Nicknoam, he looked around and he saw a lot of people hurt by what was happening. A lot of his friends couldn't get a mortgage, they were forced to sell their houses, or they couldn't get a loan as an entrepreneur. And he looked around and he saw that people were just pointing fingers, blaming each other, and nobody was actually fixing the problem. So he had nothing to do with the banking industry. He was a tech entrepreneur, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to look into solving this problem. So basically what we wanted to do was bring diversity to an outdated sector and also make it revolve around its users again, right? So we do that by looking at the wants and the needs of the users and building an experience and a product and a business model that reflects what they want. Given we only have 10 minutes, I'll give one example of how we do that. So we do that for international people living an international lifestyle, right? And they expect their bank to enable them to live that lifestyle without them worrying about their finances. So long story short, we're building the first global neobank for digital nomads and international people and businesses.
Right. I want to talk a little bit more about that concept of international nomads a little bit later. But the idea that you talked about a moment ago, the idea of bringing diversity to the outdated banking sector. When you talk about the idea of bringing diversity, you're talking about some of these sorts of individuals who maybe are not well served by the traditional banking sector?
Also, I think I talk about diversity in many different aspects. Diversity of product, which other challengers do as well. So, for example, if you look at traditional banks in general, or at least in the past, services were the same, people that worked there were the same, business models were the same. So we want to bring diversity of product, diversity of people, but also diversity of business models. I always like to compare it to a car salesman, if you look at business models of the banking industry. So a car salesman tries to buy a car as cheaply as possible, sell it as expensive as possible. Exactly what banks are doing as well. And that doesn't mean that the car salesman is a bad person, but the way he acts is to get the best margin out there. So it's not necessarily in the best interest of the person buying the car. So they're not a bad person, but it's a logical consequence of the business model. Sure. And we wanted to bring a completely new, different business model to the sector.
Right, that was one of the things that we talked about before, sort of in preparation for our conversation, the idea of the uniqueness of bunq's business model, and in some instances, the fact that a lot of companies that set out to do things similar to what bunq has done don't really have the same focus on really making sure that business model is going to serve the goals of the company itself. Could you talk a little bit more about bunq's business model and what you think it enables you to achieve?
Yeah, of course. So we set out to do things completely different from the get-go, where other challengers, well, they built really great, innovative products, like I just said, and they wanted to just grow as fast as possible. We wanted to do it differently. We had the opportunity to do so as well, because we were completely self-funded by our founder for nearly 10 years, nearly a decade, which gave us the independence to focus on what we wanted to focus on. So basically what we wanted to focus on was building a product that people love to use. So really bring a service model back to the banking industry, right? We were the first to introduce a subscription-based model because we were convinced that if you build a product that people love to use, they're willing to pay a fair price for it. And by doing so, your commercial reality is directly linked to user happiness. And what that comes down to is if your users are happy, you can be successful. And if not, your business won't thrive. So that's what we did, and that's what we focused on in the early years. And I'm happy to say that this approach paid off, because we recently reported our first profitable quarter.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic news. It's very funny to hear you say the idea that if people like a product, they'll pay for it, which is something that's not particularly revelatory in most of commerce. But sometimes when you come into innovative fintech spaces, the idea of having people pay for things makes people a little nervous.
Yeah.
But to understand that from the first point, that look, if we're providing a service that people want, people will be glad to pay for it, and to make sure that they're paying for it through a subscription model even.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think you wanted to talk about the digital nomads as well, right? Because it came to mind when you just said that. So like I said, we're building a business for international people. And I am a user of first-handedly, not just, I'm obviously biased, but I experience it as well. I live an international lifestyle, and in Europe I travel a lot, but also outside of Europe. And I expect my bank to enable me to live that lifestyle. And I'm more than happy to pay for it if it has my back and it makes sure that I don't have to worry about anything. I can give an example, maybe, that always speaks to mind. I arrived here last night. I originally come from Amsterdam, flew in quite late. As soon as I arrived at the airport, I had to buy a ticket, obviously, for the train. In Amsterdam, we pay with euros. Here, we pay with pounds. I have multiple bank accounts with bunq, a euro account, a pounds account, a US dollar account. And I didn't have to worry about, oh, I just arrived in London, now I have to link my card to my pounds account. As soon as I paid for my train ticket, the bunq app detected, hey, you're in London, you probably don't fancy paying a lot of markup fees and conversion rates, so let me just go ahead and take it from your pounds account. So if a service enables me to do that, I'm more than happy to pay for it, and it turns out more people are too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's so much conversation about things like personalization and different ways that banks can get to know you individually. But it seems that also just having the capacity to understand the sort of customers that you have, that I think you used the term borderlessness of a lot of particularly millennial and Gen Z Europeans, and just the understanding as an institution that you're going to have to meet these people where they are, and where they are is going to change over time. They're not going to always be in the same place, and that you really, if you're going to serve them, you're going to have to provide the sorts of services that facilitate them being in different places. Exactly,
and I think Europe is a very interesting example. We talked about that in our chat that we had beforehand, because it's quite different to the US. Yeah. We all look at Europe as a continent, but it's just a mixture of so many different countries, and banking is super personal, it's super cultural. The difference already, for example, between the Netherlands and Germany in terms of how we look at money, how we deal with money, payment infrastructure, it's a completely different ballgame. And we want our users to have access to financial service wherever they go without having to worry about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We definitely see some of that in the United States to some degree, with younger folks being willing to or interested in moving and having that sort of mobility. Certainly the rise of remote work has made it easier for people to be in different places from where they might actually work. But as you mentioned, Europe just takes all of that to a significantly higher level, and really being able to say that, okay, we really need to be able to catch folks from, as you said, from Amsterdam to the UK to wherever they might be is really a challenge. And it's really interesting to see an institution decide to really embrace that challenge as well. Are there other interesting trends? We talked about the borderlessness. Are there other interesting trends in Europe and the UK that are similar in this, that you think are things that financial services really need to be paying attention to if they're going to better serve their customers, whether they're millennial, Gen Zs, or older customers for that matter?
Yeah, of course. There's many. I won't dive into them all today. But if we stick to the group that we've been talking about up till now, this group doesn't only crave location independence. What they're also looking for is to live a financially healthy lifestyle, right? These digital nomads, they actually purposely plan for their future, set money aside. We recently did a survey where it turns out that they do. However, if you look at the market, it's quite challenging to do so, right? In the same survey, we found out that I think more than 94%, but don't pin me down on it, feels affected by the current economic downturn and is actually cutting expenses and delaying long-term purchases because of that. So what we do at bunq is we also integrate tools in the app to make sure that they can budget properly and are in control of their finances. I think that's one of the trends that's happening currently. Another relevant one, I think, is the changing interest rate environment, which also ties into being financially healthy, of course. We've been in a zero interest rate environment for quite a while, and that's changing. And because we're a tech company, we can move fast, and we're really looking into how we can play into that. So whenever the ECB raises their rates, we're really looking into, okay, what does that mean? How can we make sure that our users benefit from that as well and act as quickly as possible?
Very interesting, interesting. We really don't have a lot of time left. I just wanted
I
to...
see, 3 seconds.
Just wanted to wrap up by asking, what can we expect from bunq in 2023 and beyond? You mentioned recently reaching profitability.
Yeah.
What's in store?
Well, now that we proven the viability of our business model, now it's time to scale for us. We did it the other way around. So we're currently active in 30 European markets. We want to scale across Europe, but we have global ambitions as well. So we will grow, that's the plan. At the same time, like you said, we will keep the changing wants and needs of our users into account and adapt our product accordingly. And other than that, we like to keep things a secret, so stay tuned.
Fantastic. Stay tuned, we will. Thank you very much for joining us and talking with us a little bit. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Bianca Zwart of bunq.
Thank you.